4:46 a.m. Strait of Hormuz. A U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is cutting through black water at 19 knots. Radar had been clean. Sonar had been quiet. Then the sky tiers open. One inbound missile is shredded by failing CIWS at 1.9 miles. A second dies closer, under a mile. The third does not. It slips through a gap of barely 4 degrees. Then impact. A fireball rips above the waterline. Steel bends. Lights burst. Shock slams through every compartment in less than 1/10 of a second. 4 sailors are killed instantly. 11 more are wounded. And before the smoke can even settle, the real trap is already closing from below. 3 Iranian F-14 Tomcats. 2 Kilo-class submarines. 1 kill box in the most dangerous 21-mile-wide choke point on Earth. This was never a rescue mission. It was an ambush. If you want more high-tension military breakdowns told minute by minute, subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next only gets worse. 4:18 a.m. Strait of Hormuz. On the surface, it looks empty. Not peaceful, empty. A U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer moves through black water at 18 knots, cutting a narrow wake across one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth. Radar clean, sonar quiet, engines steady, crew alert but unhurried. Commercial tanker traffic holds to its lanes with almost mechanical discipline. Above, no moon, no horizon. Just a hard spread of stars over a strip of water barely 21 miles wide at its tightest point. Everything is where it should be. That is the problem, because by 4:18 a.m., the trap is no longer being prepared. It is already finished. 3 Iranian F-14 Tomcats are airborne, spread wide and low beyond the destroyer's immediate detection picture. 2 Kilo-class submarines are resting beneath the thermocline with engines cold, batteries carrying the load, producing so little noise they almost disappear into the sea itself. A drone, small, disposable, already dying, is moving toward the point where it will broadcast a recorded distress call on Channel 16. The one frequency every ship is required to hear, required to answer. The geometry has been measured in advance. The timing has been rehearsed. The water depth, the radar clutter, the approach lanes, the turn radius of a warship answering a Mayday in darkness. At this moment, the destroyer is roughly 12 minutes from the center of the kill box. No one on board knows that yet. No one sees the shape forming around them. They are still inside that rare military illusion where silence feels like safety. Out here, silence means something else. It means everybody is in position. 4:29 a.m. The radio breaks open. Mayday, Mayday, fishing vessel under attack, crew in the water. The voice is fractured, panicked, cut by static so harsh it sounds almost physical. Then it repeats, same rhythm, same desperation, same coordinates. That should be the first warning. Real fear never loops that cleanly. The decision on board takes less than 5 seconds. Maritime law says respond. Naval doctrine says investigate. Human instinct says move. So the destroyer turns. Engines rise. Speed climbs from 18 knots to 24, then higher. The bow swings toward the distress position, and with that one maneuver, the ship begins doing exactly what the trap was built to make it do. The fishing vessel does not exist. The men in the water do not exist. The emergency is a recording carried by a disposable drone already dropping lower, already preparing to vanish beneath the surface before anyone can trace the source. The coordinates ahead are not a rescue point. They are a firing. Geometry. Pre-surveyed. Pre-measured. Chosen because an incoming destroyer answering at speed will present its flank at just the wrong angle to the coastline. and just the right angle to 3 separate attack lanes. At 4:36 a.m., the first anomaly flickers across radar, bearing 271, roughly 39 miles out. Fast, intermittent, gone before a stable track can form. Then the electronic warfare suite catches something worse. A fire control pulse, short, narrow, intentional, less than half a second, but enough. The signature matches the shape of an AWG-71. An F-14 Tomcat has just taken a look at the ship and then gone dark again. Not searching, measuring. Then comes the first violent correction to reality. Phalanx C IWS spins alive as a low inbound object tears into the edge of the defensive envelope. The burst catches it late. Too late to stop the blast completely. The target breaks apart at around 2.4 miles, but the detonation still throws a sheet of pressure and burning fragments across the outer structure. Antennas shudder. One exposed section of the deck flashes into fire. Metal rains into the water. A warning shot. Not to scare them, to pin their eyes upward. And this is where the math turns ugly, because that blast is not the main strike. It is the hand pulling every sensor, every weapon, every heartbeat in one direction. The real hit is only seconds behind it. 4:37 a.m. 4 seconds after the first blast, the ambush fully opens. 3 high-speed contacts punch onto radar almost at once. North, northwest, west, not drifting into view, not building slowly, appearing with the kind of timing that tells everyone in Combat Information Center the same thing at the same moment. They were already there. The 3 Iranian F-14 Tomcats had been riding low, cold, and disciplined just under the destroyer's clean detection picture. Now they climb and accelerate together, each one pushing past Mach 1.4, each one locking from a different angle, each one forcing the ship to split its attention across too much sky and too little time. The electronic warfare suite stops warning and starts screaming. Full-power AWG-71 emissions hit from multiple directions. 3 lock tones stack over each other in every headset. Chaff fires. The ship turns hard. Phalanx C IWS is already tracking. The first inbound missile dies at roughly 1.7 miles. The second is destroyed closer, less than 0.9 miles from the hull. The third keeps coming. That is the problem with saturation. You do not need every weapon to get through. You need one. The destroyer's evasive turn shifts the geometry just enough to ruin a perfect defensive line. Barely a few degrees, maybe 3, maybe 4. On a chart table, that looks trivial. In a missile engagement, it is the difference between a clean intercept and a burning warship. The third missile slips through the gap. Then impact. The detonation strikes above the waterline on the starboard side with enough force to rewrite the ship's interior in a fraction of a second. Steel plating buckles inward. Light fixtures burst across multiple compartments at once. A pressure wave hammers through bulkheads, passages, consoles, lungs. Watertight doors slam loose from their frames. Fire rolls up the outer structure and throws orange light across black water for more than 25 miles. 5 sailors are killed at the point of impact. 10 more are injured in the first seconds. Power flickers, screens reboot. 1 defensive computing node cycles offline, comes back, then drops again. And the timing is merciless, because the hit does not end the attack. It prepares the next layer. The destroyer is now damaged. Burning, louder in the water, slower to answer, harder to turn. Every sensor team is fighting smoke, noise, broken data, and overlapping threats above the surface. Exactly as planned. By 4:39 a.m., the ship is still afloat, still armed, still moving, but no longer in control of the fight. 4:39 a.m. Sonar. This is where the ambush reveals its second layer. While the destroyer is still burning from the missile hit, while damage control teams are fighting fire and rerouting power, 2 Kilo-class submarines move from waiting to firing. They had been lying beneath the thermocline for hours. Engines cold, speed minimal, noise almost erased by the water around them. Then both launch. The torpedo warning does not arrive gradually. It arrives as an emergency. 2 fast screw signatures are already inside 5,900 yards, closing at roughly 44 knots. Too close for comfort, too close for debate. A damaged destroyer running hard is not subtle underwater. It is the loudest thing in the battle space. The seekers do not need to search for long. They already have the shape they want. At that distance, the numbers are brutal. Less than 4 minutes to impact. Less if the geometry tightens. Less if the ship cannot turn cleanly. Countermeasures deploy immediately. The helm throws the ship into a hard maneuver it can barely sustain with fire in the aft section, and systems still cycling from the missile strike. 1 decoy blooms in the water. Another follows seconds later. The first torpedo wavers, then bends off. The second does not. It keeps driving forward with a stable solution and a narrowing angle. The destroyer cannot build enough speed to open the track. It cannot pivot fast enough to break the lock. Above the surface, smoke still rises. Below it, the real kill shot is coming straight in. And now the margin is down to seconds. 4:42 a.m. The final torpedo is seconds from solution. Its track is clean. Its seeker is stable. Its angle is tightening against a destroyer that is still burning, still bleeding speed, still fighting to keep its combat system stitched together after the missile hit. The ship turns as hard as it can. It is not enough. At 5,200 yards, then 4,600, then 4,000, the math stops being tactical and becomes physical. Steel, distance, velocity, time. The torpedo is closing at roughly 45 knots. The destroyer has damage in the aft section, partial sensor degradation, and too much noise in the water to hide from anything. Countermeasures are out. 1 weapon already chased a decoy and failed. This one does not hesitate. Then the sky changes. 2 AIM, 1, 2 OAMR, AAMS detonate overhead less than a second apart. The first Iranian F-14 disappears from radar in an instant. The second vanishes before the display can even settle from the first. 2 tracks, then none. At the same moment, a massive electronic warfare burst slams across the engagement zone. Every active sensor feels it. The torpedo's guidance picture distorts. Its terminal seeker, locked onto a damaged target seconds earlier, suddenly loses the clean acoustic separation it needs to finish the run. It holds its last heading for 3 more seconds, maybe 4. Then it passes across the bow. Close, far too close, but not close enough. The third F-14 brakes immediately, rolls hard, and runs for Iranian airspace under full afterburner. It is already too late. 2 F-35 Joint Strike Fighters had been holding high above the ambush site in total emission silence long before the first Mayday transmission ever touched Channel 16. They were not rushed in. They were already there. That changes everything. The destroyer's helicopter, airborne despite the fire damage, continues prosecuting the submarines. A P-8 Poseidon, quiet until now, tightens the net farther out. The remaining Kilo-class submarine tries to withdraw toward deeper water. It does not make it. By 5:08 a.m., the underwater part of the ambush is over. At 5:47 a.m., 6 Tomahawk cruise missiles leave the destroyer's forward VLS cells. Low flight, tight routing. The target package had been built in real time by the F-35s, tracing the F-14 ingress lines back to a dispersed coastal airbase on the Iranian shoreline. 42 minutes later, the runway is shattered. Hardened shelters collapse. A fuel storage area erupts into a secondary blast that burns long after sunrise. The base that launched the ambush is still on the map, but not as a functioning military asset. 6:31 a.m., Strait of Hormuz. The water is quiet again. Not calm, quiet. There is a difference. Less than 2 hours earlier, this stretch of sea had turned into a layered ambush built from timing, deception, and geometry. Now the smoke is higher. The radar picture is thinner. The immediate shooting has stopped. But the meaning of what just happened is only getting larger. Within hours, the military balance across the region begins to shift. Combat air patrols over the strait increase. A second carrier strike group, already moving closer over the previous 48 hours, now looks less like routine positioning and more like a warning written in steel. Iranian fast attack craft surge farther into the lower Gulf. Coastal defense missile batteries along nearly 400 kilometers of shoreline move to elevated readiness. Nobody says the word escalation too loudly. They do not need to. The oil markets understand it immediately. Insurance firms understand it immediately. Shipping companies understand it immediately. Crude prices jump. War risk premiums surge. Several tanker operators begin rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope, adding almost 2 extra weeks to delivery schedules and hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional fuel cost per voyage. A battle measured in minutes begins echoing across economies measured in billions. And this, to me, is the most unsettling part. Not the missile strike, not the torpedo run, not even the Tomahawk response. The most unsettling part is that both sides learned something. Iran learned that a destroyer can be pushed closer to the edge than most people would ever admit in public. The United States learned exactly how this kind of trap is assembled, timed, and layered. That means the next version, if there is a next version, will be sharper, faster, less forgiving. So here is the real question.